And I read articles last week on my own show of how the information czar, as they call them, it's interesting everyone's called a czar now, isn't it? Isn't it? You think that's all coincidence in Obama's administration? But the information czar has said that they have to come down on conspiracy theorists. They like to tar you as conspiracy. I don't use the word conspiracy. A conspiracy is something which is left to what you believe because it cannot be proven. We use the facts here. The facts are what you use. Checkable facts. So, appreciate what you have, and people should support them because, honestly, there's not much left. I get so many emails from across the world, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, different parts of Europe, where they really are so envious of the fact that there are places in the US where you can speak out on the airwaves with your own voice, not just typing something to someone else, but actually speaking out. So you have to stand up or it'll dwindle away. And getting back to what I'm saying, another thing that also knew after the American Revolution was that the bankers would take over if you did not keep them in check. That was so widely discussed, I won't even bother mentioning the books to read about it, but that was the cause of big debates at the very beginning, because they understood what had happened in Europe. They watched Europe. They knew the history. There's one thing about people back then that had better educations, those at least who had the private educations, as all education was back then in the 1700s. They had better educations than the average person has today. They could read Latin and Greek. They knew the histories of ancient cultures. They knew the histories down through to their present time. And they knew that tyranny always existed. It's the nature within society of struggle for power between dominant people. And every generation, more are born. They want dominance and power. Everybody else suffers because of it down through the ages, but nothing has changed up to the present time. And when you get leagues of them, combinations of the same characters who have money and power and seek more power, you're in big trouble. But they talked about the ability to do it simply through money manipulation and the ownership of money and the distribution of money alone. Thomas Jefferson wrote to John Taylor in 1816, and it's in the letters of Jefferson. And it says, the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity, meaning future generations, under the name of funding, is but swindling futurity on a large scale. It's nothing but a swindle, all this borrowing money stuff. Always has been a swindle. Why should governments be borrowing anything from anywhere when they supposedly run the whole country within on everything which they collect on taxes? It used to be export and import taxes only. That was enough to run the countries, especially the US. But of course, once the good times roll and folk are getting happy, they stop watching what's going on. And the big boys know it, and away they go. And wars are fantastic for this. Under war, you give up all these rights thinking you'll get through it and things will go back to normal. Well, Professor Carl Quigley said, again, the historian for the Council on Foreign Relations, he says wars have different purposes, but one of the main purposes is to change society. He says you can get more done in 5 years of war on a governmental and bureaucratic level of change than you can in 50 years of peace and propaganda. We give up our rights and we never go back to where we were. Never. And you're always left with a massive debt. It was only 2 or 3 years ago that Britain admitted it just finished paying off the debt for World War I. They've still got World War II, Korea, and a whole bunch of other ones to go since then. Plus the so-called present war on terror that's costing more than any of them. Back with more after this break.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
You're tuned in to the National Intel Report, the Real Talk Radio Show.
Hi folks, I'm Alan Watsons. I'm standing in for John Stadmiller, who's off today, for another half hour, and then I'll be back on again at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But really, not so much giving you what's happening today from news articles, because I have thousands of them I could go over. But really, it ends up being an endless stream as we follow what's been done to us. And I've used analogies so many times in the past where it's like being laboratory rats. And you're in big cages in the laboratory, and at night the lights go off and you have some peace and you can chat to each other, and then you fall asleep. And in the morning you wake up early and you sit and natter amongst yourselves about what they're going to do to you today. What do you think they're going to do? Will they stick the electrodes in their brain today, or is it going to be the injections, and so on and so on? That's all we do, is we repeat the news and repeat the news. We're repeating the effects of things, but never getting into the causes of things. Why? Why is that? Because we don't want to believe, in a sense, that it's really that bad. We don't want to believe that, yet this has actually been done on purpose. And until people can cross that barrier, yet they are doing this. They have got to a stage where they really want to depopulate. They have gotten to the stage, and if you read their global meetings, you'll find about sustainability. If you go into the archives from the Optimum Population Trust, and I have some of them on my own website, go into them, and these are big players in the world field talking about depopulation by every and all means possible. Until you cross that barrier and say, my God, they're actually doing it. They're serious. Then you'll still be left in la-la land, in a no-man's land of irritation, anger, and agitation because of, look what they're doing to us today. Well, guess what? I could pick up another 100 articles tomorrow and read them, and the next day, and the next day. And you know something? Yapping about it doesn't do a darn thing. It's a mental leap you've got to take and cross over and accept the fact that war has been declared upon you on every level a long time ago. And all these articles are just the effects of that war. Can you believe, for an instance, those at the top don't know these things? Look at who is behind Obama. Never mind Obama. I always say the presidents and prime ministers are nothing but frontmen. It's the ones behind them that's important. And here you have a lineup of ardent globalists. Some of them were communists not so long ago, openly. They all talked about the need to depopulate. I've gone over the articles written by them, and some of them wrote books about it back in the 60s and 70s and later even. We should be very, very afraid. Here they are in power, and we think, well, they're different once they're in power. It's like a religious conversion, I guess. They swear allegiance, they go through all that stuff, and they're converted into just normal Americans now. Do you really, really believe that? Do you really believe that? God help you if you do. They can bypass all the democratic principles, and they've been doing it for so long now, you can't even keep up with executive orders. Britain has the same thing, executive orders. When they want something on the global agenda to go through, rather than have it debated in public, and at least in Parliament, that's what they call in public, and argued upon, they want to rush something through, they put off a diplomatic expert to the Queen, and she signs it into law, and that's law. That's what they call democracy in Britain. The most important things that we should know about what's happening are kept secret from the public under Official Secrets Acts. Not to be published. You know, the free trade negotiations for the amalgamations of the Americas that was really the precursor for NAFTA, it set up the foundation for NAFTA, is buried outside Ottawa, underground, in an archive, and hasn't to be opened for another, I think, 30 to 50 years. That's a great democracy. That's democracy in action. Why would they have to keep that secret from the public? Because we see in 30 to 50 years there will be no Canada. There will be no United States of America. Certainly not as anything that you could possibly recognize. That's what they do. And we think we're voting people in. We go through that farce. We think we're voting people in for us. People who are vetted through an institution way so high that you don't even know they exist. They vet every one of those guys long in advance.